With that, we are moving to the GenAI and fraud fighting panel, and we are going to invite people without necessarily committing to their role in the good, the bad, or the ugly of this reality of the AI era. I'm pretty sure that the first person I'm going to invite is going to represent the bad side. What are the bad guys doing? So one of the top experts I've ever met in understanding fraudster mentality, Arik, Atar, senior threat intelligence researcher at Radware. We can start coming up on stage because there's the logistics of the mics and all. And repeating visitor of the Fraud Fighters meetups. Baram, PhD, senior lecturer at Ilan University. Together with Gil representing the good side, Sasson, PhD, director of the AI and Big Data MBA program at Reichman University. Full disclosure, we had a research initiative together with your talented students and lecturers, of course. Last but not least, my partner in crime and possibly representing the ugly side of what could happen if we abuse AI as fraud fighters. Chen Zamir, founder of Native Risk.
So, hello everyone. Really excited to be here. Fraud Fighters is an amazing community of defenders that I'm proud to be part of, and to present here some of our research finding in Radware CTI team is a great pleasure. I'm Arik Atar. For the last decade, I've been spending most of my days, my nights sometimes, in dark web, deep web forums, developing a lot of identities and actually acting as an undercover hacker for the companies that I work for. For the last 2 years, I've been part of the Radware CTI team. There we'll deliver a lot of OSINT-based research upon threat actors. I want to share with you what I see, my perspective of how AI actually changed the threat landscape. A lot of the people talk constantly about how AI makes hacker better in hacking. I will argue it makes them better in other fields that they really need to be better in. So my specialty is hackers that open up their own businesses, their own SMBs. Usually it's subscription-based. If it's a DDoS threat actor, he will have a stressor tool that actually commits a DDoS attack for 100 rubles for a week. If it's an account takeover, it will sell a script that commits this attack for $50 on Telegram. So each and every one of them have different business model, but all of them have something in common. They have the promotion a paradox. They become a business because they are good in hacking, but then all of a sudden they have to be better in all of the skills that they never practiced. They have to be great salesperson, they have to do marketing, they have to do customer support, they have to do customer success. If they have a great, like a lot of big clients that pay huge subscription, have different priority and different tiers. Those are hackers that try to be a business. And this is where AI comes in. Because this is the first time in history that at least as long as I've been watching those threat actors, that they have somewhere to outsource the marketing efforts and the customer support. And this has been something that dragged them nuts for a lot of time, because it's out of the scope, it requires human skills, which is not something that hackers usually don't get to be excelled at.
I'm shocked that fraudsters don't have wonderful people skills and they don't love to do customer support.
Exactly.
This is news to me.
Now they have ChatGPT to write them down a great customer support, and you can see some of the instances. There before ChatGPT and after ChatGPT, the tone has changed. Before that, it was, if you don't understand the term of use, please move on, don't buy from me. And after that, your appreciation for a product, and our view is really important to us. So they moved to this corporate kind of tone in all of their businesses because all of them are using ChatGPT, and Gemini now become the #1, of course, for creating materials for marketing. All of the ads, the visual ads are created through video AI generators. And it's easy to do that. Now they don't need narrative, they have voice for everything. And this is something that allows them to focus on really what they're really good at, hacking. They don't need ChatGPT to reverse engineer, they've been doing it for years. They need ChatGPT to answer a client in the middle of the night or to integrate it to do some kind of long, any type of service actually, and automation. This is actually what I've seen as get adopted a lot. The second thing that I'm going to bring here, and the last one from my point of view, we've been collecting in the beginning of this year, the first half of 2025, we've been collecting 100 scripts from Telegram that are targeted different companies from across 6 industries. All of them are credential stuffing. If you ever lost an account to a hacker without pressing any button, it was probably due to credential stuffing attack. So we collected 100 of those. And then we profiled the top 3. The top 3 wrote 51% of the scripts, meaning most of the 3 threat actors are dominating this threat landscape, at least for the first half of 2025. All of these 3 are group members, same as me, as in a lot of Telegram servers that are dedicated to breach account of Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT. Premium accounts, the $200 tier, is being sold there for minimum price because it's a breach account do credential stuffing. So those credential stuffing script developers are already using, as we know, breach accounts, which will be actually the smart move to do from their point of view. They're using breach accounts of OpenAI, Google, and Claude in order to perform better in everything. So we know that they have been using it. It doesn't mean that everyone that uses those kind of tools becomes an advanced hacker. It only means that the advanced hacker are surely using those, because we can see in those forums a lot of questions about API pipeline. If they want to create any kind of operation, we can see what they are discussing and asking questions about. So this is, as far as my point of view, you can read more about it in the Invisible Breach research paper in Radware website. And moving on.
Thank you very much. So I'm learning from, and also we had the slides up as you were speaking, I'm learning from some of this research that the sophisticated bad guys definitely are passionate early adopters of AI for all purposes, both to boost their client services and to get stronger in being able to use breached accounts, for example, in order to scale their attacks so much faster. I'm also curious about, and I know that Gil and Roy have been looking into this as well, curious about what happens to the mid-level or the even beginners within this industry. Who else is scaling up their attacks? Gil, I think you've been looking at this.
Yeah, okay, so thank you. Yes, so one of the things that we've been seeing in an ongoing initiative that I'm working on with University of California, Berkeley, and Fortinet, cybersecurity company, we're trying to separate the hype from reality when it comes to AI-enabled cybercrimes, and we conducted a series of 3 tabletop exercises, one in California, one in Singapore, and the third one was today, early this morning, here in the Naftali building. And one of the things that we've seen, and that was especially relevant from the US perspective, is that you mentioned, that the sophisticated actors are definitely using AI and getting better. And one of the things that we've seen, again, especially in the US, is that regular criminals, even teenagers and like non-sophisticated criminals are finding or starting to find AI-enabled cybercrime more attractive, because today they don't need to be the best coders, they don't need to have such an advanced technical capabilities in order to start, getting into the business, right, and shifting from regular crimes to online crimes, and they are not sophisticated, they're not too educated technically, but they're, they get in their gains and they find it more and more attractive. So one of we had a team of FBI team that came in from San Francisco, and they mentioned that they're starting to see this type of shift in crime in general.
So these teenagers might be the clients of the attackers that Arik has been tracking. And I remember earlier this morning, Oren was discussing Base 44 when my kids were playing with Base 44 because their mom had to, push them into use whatever is available. My kid said something like, "Ooh, I could make up a new type of dinosaur and set up a professional-looking website that says this is a brand new paleontology discovery." And there's pretty much a fine line between my kid wanting to mess with his friends and someone publishing this as actual news, or the kids that the research you've been doing in Singapore and California is eventually spreading to areas where newcomers are an actual threat for scale, if not for anything else. Roy, your group of students, from the little that I got to meet them, were deeply immersed in looking into many examples. Wow.
I am usually greeted by this intro. It's I loved it. Thank you, Gilit. So indeed, our students of the MBA in AI and Big Data conducted a research together with Gilit and her team in DoubleVerify, where this is more of a grayish area in which there is a lot of online content that is being created, where it's very hard to identify whether this is generated by AI or not, and whether it was legal to generate it or not. So just to indicate, if you will open LinkedIn right now, probably 80% of the content that you will see there, even people that you know, are utilizing somehow GenAI in order to create their posts. Is that
raise your hand if you used AI to generate some kind of posts?
So I assume everybody, including I've attended an amazing fraud conference in Tel Aviv University. Also ask yourself what percentage of the content that you're seeing in presentations is somehow curated based on existing content. So I think the more AI becomes sophisticated in creating the content, the distribution of what we will see will increase, but then what would require us to identify unique content to say, okay, this is something original that also deserves some kind of credit or even financial incentives, that's going to be harder and harder. And we will really need to define what does it mean to be original these days. One of the things that we've seen with the research that the students have done was actually that there are many cases where it's unknown. It's very unclear, even if you have a sophisticated model or put like 5 students who understand machine learning, understand the natural language processing, to identify whether content is originally created or not is becoming harder and harder. You need to trick, to find all sorts of subtleties and tricks. For example, a funny example that we had was there was a content about lambtail. I'm not sure if you're familiar with lambtail. So lambtail is a kind of a vegetable. But as part of the drift that went on as part of that content, the AI, which we know written that content, also offered to prepare a soup which includes the lamb's tail. Not the vegetable, but something else. So identifying these kinds of disparities is becoming trickier and trickier. But also in terms of defining what does it mean real content versus AI generated is becoming harder.
So everything's getting harder, everything's getting more scalable, everything's getting harder to differentiate between what's real and not real. And we haven't even discussed, we were kind of around these topics of what's good or bad. We haven't even discussed humans versus bots, which we'll get to in a minute. But, okay, that was a lot of the bad side. What's the good side? Gil, if you're going back to that collaboration you've mentioned on the academic side, are you seeing more of these global collaborations on the side of good guys?
Yeah, so I think, I think it's not, what I'm going to say, it's not unique just for, cybercrime and AI. I think every time there's new technology, every time there's something new, I think pretty quickly we understand that no one can work alone, right? We have to have this private-public partnerships, right, with PPP, and I think it's especially relevant, I can, from my own experience and from what I think we were seeing in the past couple of years, is that the speed, as you mentioned, the speed of the technology, the speed of the developments, right? Like we wake up one day and we think ChatGPT is the best model. We wake up the following day and no, ChatGPT is the worst model. You have to leave it and move to different ones. And it's very hard to keep track. And working together, the industry and government agencies and academia, that is, in many cases is a source of a lot of the research that is being done. I think that's the way to think about the challenges and act. And I think it was recently published, the Operation Serengeti 2.0, right? I think it's an amazing example of an operation that was conducted with the Europol, the African Europol, some private companies that got, I think, more than 1,000 cyber criminals in Africa got arrested. They got, I think, almost $1 million back from frauds that were committed. So that's, it's, the Europol or other agencies, they can work alone, but they won't have the threat intelligence that's coming out of the private companies. They need this type of cooperation. So I think that's, if we think about the good, I think we're at a point that we know how much these partnerships are meaningful.
The magic of collaboration, and it's very encouraging to hear what you mentioned: academia, private market, Interpol, Europol. Those are our defenses. And from my very narrow point of view, working with Reichman University students, thanks to AI, they had the ability to produce very compelling and helpful pieces of research in a very short time as well. So yes, good guys can use AI very effectively as well. Chen, this is an opportunity to test your neck mic. When does it get ugly? What are the mistakes that we're about to make if we get overly optimistic about bringing everyone together and using AI to fight AI and everything will be good, right?
Yeah, of course. AI solves fraud, right? Clear. Yeah, I think, I'm talking all the time to a lot of different teams that are starting to think how to utilize GenAI and specifically LLMs for fraud prevention. And I'm seeing a couple of limitations or maybe cautionary tales that come up very often and very repeatedly. I'll start with one thing that I'll say very shortly, even though it's like a whole topic in and of itself, and that is that I'm seeing many teams trying to raise or replace their current machine learning score with an LLM-based scoring system or scoring algorithm. I'll just say, I personally think currently it's a waste of time and effort to maybe best case get a marginal incremental benefit. So if there's one takeaway from what I'm about to say, take that one, I implore you. But the ones that I see more commonly are actually biases. And introducing bias to decision-making, to data analysis, to fraud prevention, that's nothing new, right? We, as humans, are biased. The rules that we write are biased. The machine learning models that we train are biased. So it is natural that LLMs would be biased as well. But I think that the way that LLMs introduce bias to our own processes is very subtle. And it is very easy to miss, especially if we're not used to that. So I'll give a couple of examples. The first one, I'm working with this marketing team, and last week we wanted to post a blog post about Black Friday. It was just a week after Black Friday, and we wanted to post something about how we saw an uptick in volumes. Very boring story, right? You see that every year. And the head of marketing fed a data set of transactions into the LLM, and the LLM kind of like wrote a blog post. We just talked about it. That's what you see in LinkedIn. And I was going through that, and I'm saying, we see merchants such as Amazon and Walmart experiencing fraud spikes of up to 40%. And I'm thinking to myself, 40% of the total volume being fraud at Amazon, I don't know, that sounds a bit dubious to me. And I'm like, okay, who pulled the data? The CEO. Okay, I'm asking the CEO.
That's a red flag there.
Yeah, how do we know about fraud? Like, it's been just a couple of days, so how do we have the label so fast? And the CEO responded, I didn't put any fraud data in the data set. So apparently ChatGPT also thought that the story was quite boring, and it invented this fraud spike. Now, you can say this is an hallucination, right? And we know about hallucination, and we know how to spot them and so on. The point is not the hallucination itself. The point is the fact that even though ChatGPT or not miscalculated, but kind of like mislabeled a specific column and thought it was fraud data, the fact that it wasn't able to reason around this figure, 40%, and say this doesn't make any sense. The fact that it cannot take information from outside of the data set and sanity check the results, that is something that can be quite dangerous. That is not something new, but it is something that AI, especially if it makes automated decisions without human intervention or human supervision, that can be quite tricky. So this is the first thing. Another bias that I see, or at least I see the danger of, is profiling. Best example in fraud detection is ethnicity or nationality checks. We actually use them mostly for spotting false positives. I'll give an example. I have a Spanish credit card. I arrived to Israel. I want to order a cab, and on a rainy day to come to a conference, I would get blocked, right? That's pretty normal, unfortunately, still, in 2025. And if I can calculate a feature, if I can analyze my name and say, okay, Chen Zamir is an Israeli name, even though the card is Spanish, the fact that the guy appears in Israel with an Israeli IP and so on, that makes sense. That's a false positive. Let them through, unblock the transaction. That's a good use case. The problem is that if I want to introduce nationality checks into a machine learning model, I need to consciously do a lot of things. I need to decide that. I need to develop the feature that calculates nationality. I need to choose that feature to appear in my model. And after the model run, I can also see that the feature was used. I can see it was part of the leading features that contributed to the score, and so on. The problem with LLMs is that nationality can be calculated on the fly. I didn't ask or tell the LLM to do that, but being able to analyze text and contribute semantics to it, and being able to see the connections between different data points allow LLMs to calculate features on the fly, and also do that in a way that is inconsistent and non-transparent. And that's something that is very hard to monitor. So,
and very dangerous from a compliance point of view, from an ethical point of view, and from efficiency point of view, which is kind of all the same.
Yes, and from experience, by the way, also like internally within the company, I think it will cause a lot of employees to feel unpleasant when such things happen, hopefully. What should we do about it? I don't have a lot of good ideas. I would say, though, that it is very clear that LLMs are not in a state where the technology is mature enough to be left to its own devices. So introducing human supervision and intervention throughout processes where LLMs contribute to decision-making is still key, and I honestly don't see it changing in the next few years.
That is depressing, but I will say that we had those problems before GenAI, right?
Yes.
Back when we were in ML engineering, or back when I can't even remember the names of the rule engines that we used to use. But like you mentioned, the fact that an LLM might calculate profiling on the fly without letting you know, that is a real ugly risk. And I think if I'm looking at examples, I'm lucky enough to not work in anywhere that I get to see PII anymore. I'm one of the lucky ones. But I do see things like behavioral patterns of someone clicking 1,000 times a minute, and your profiling LLM might characterize this as typical of certain parts of the world, because, in some parts, specifically APAC, we see different behavioral patterns, or it can profile this as not even human. And I think that's an area that Shlomit was touching earlier in her talk about agentic commerce. And I think that is one last piece of the ugly challenge, where we get to decide if we let the LLM not only characterize if something is good or bad or ugly or weird, like someone using their Spanish credit card to book a taxi on a rainy day in Tel Aviv, but also, was this a human being? And if not, does it mean it was an AI agent shopping for you, or was it part of an attack? And Arik, I know this goes back to your field of expertise, so that's something maybe we can wrap up with.
Thank you. 2 months ago, Radware released a threat alert about agentic AI main services, as they don't have a good enough solution for identification. Maybe some of you used agent mode in some of the chatbots, so you know that those are able to go independently and make purchases on behalf of you, or book tickets for a concert, or for flights, or for hotel. So this is really used in the travel industry and e-commerce, especially now in the holiday season. The problem is that those type of bots, unlike the old search engine crawlers that used to go to your site and just index something for Google, these ones are already requesting permission for post type of request. Post type of request is whatever you do when you interact with the application. When you submit something, when you upload, when you download, when you do actual stuff on the website and not just scraping text. This means that on the simple level, every threat actor currently that wants to spoof, to look like a good AI agent, can just put Claude within his user agent, which is something that everyone can rewrite. And every website almost will identify it as Claude and will let them bypass all detections. Because we want Claude agent to go on our website if we are El Al, for example. We want the Claude to be able to book ticket flights, since ChatGPT agents becomes at the crossroad of the network and not just search engines. So the e-commerce marketing teams are pushing for enabling those new bots, new permissions like post. The official recommendation and documentation of those services advise the security teams to allow them to post and not just to interact with the website. So those policy is currently very, very fragile to spoofing attempts. All you need to do is put Claude on your UA, and because Claude doesn't work from specific range of IPs that come from all over, it's impossible to really truly identify them. So where this is going, OpenAI understood first the problem and the security gap, and they're working on a protocol that's about to be launched on March 26. Stay tuned about this one. Meanwhile, if you have an application, a website, and you see an increase in Claude or Grok bots on your website, it might be a cyber attack. You have really no way to know unless you're running more advanced behavior detection and not just a singular one.
So some optimism towards protocols that might emerge in 2026. For example, OpenAI, Amazon, others are working on, there's tons of new acronyms that we'll need to learn. And the message to get us to a safer place is to be accurate, granular, being able to really differentiate between the good parts of traffic, the good interactions and the bad interactions. Good luck to all of us with that. And with this, we will move to